This story is going to have a component where I am going to be super mad at the school, the college that I went to, because they are now doing propaganda that is mandated for all incoming students and teachers. You must never protest Israel. Now, they don't quite say it that way, but it's really close, as you'll see. So everyone must do the propaganda. We'll get to that in a minute, but first, the full story, Franny.
Yeah, there's two parts to this, but the big news is that charges have now been dropped against the majority of Columbia students who were arrested at the end of April while they were occupying Hamilton Hall, that they had renamed Hind Hall in honor of the young 6-year-old Gazan who was murdered in her car with her entire family. To refresh your memory, that occupation took place under less than 24 hours, less than a day. The students had occupied that building in protest of the genocide in Gaza, but specifically asking Columbia University to divest from Israel and divest their tuition money from Israel. And then the NYPD, at the behest of the president of Columbia, did this.
Hundreds of New York City police officers in riot gear moving into Columbia University. SWAT teams rolling in. One by one, police officers seen filing in on an extended ramp into the second floor of Columbia's Hamilton Hall. In the late night hours, police forming a line around the perimeter, clearing protesters blocking the entrance. Once inside, going floor by floor, room by room. NYPD using flashbangs. At least 100 people arrested, led away, hands tied behind their backs with zip ties.
So that's just a refresher of just how much machinery was brought in by the NYPD to break up this. I would call it peaceful. It's a student occupation. It's been happening since time immemorial in this country, but there you go. Now, even though hundreds were arrested, and this is according to Reuters, the charges that stuck were with about 46 of those students. So those 46 protesters were arrested on that night of April 30th for their 20-hour takeover of the academic building were initially charged with trespass in the 3rd degree, which is a misdemeanor. However, just today, Stephen Millen, a prosecutor in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, told the court on Thursday his office would not prosecute 30 of those 46 who were Columbia students at the time of the arrest, nor 2 who were Columbia employees, citing prosecutorial discretion and lack of evidence. And part of that was that the charges weren't, they didn't know whether they were destroying property, they couldn't see inside of there, so the charges were dropped. There's still 13 students who are, their charges have not yet been dropped, and 1 who is being prosecuted, so they're seeking to prosecute 1 of those 46 arrested. His name is James Carlson. He's not affiliated with Columbia, this is graphic 4, and he's charged with criminal mischief and arson for setting an Israeli flag alight prior to the takeover and for damaging a police surveillance camera in jail. So that's the charge that's actually moving forward. Again, when this happened, I knew this would also be the result. That ultimately there would be nothing to convict these students on, even though many of them were brutalized that night by the NYPD. They were involved in a protest, in an occupation. It was for a reason. It had really nothing to do with anyone but their own university. So I'm not surprised they dropped these charges. Of course, this is all being painted by the right as Alvin Bragg drops charges. You know, obviously Alvin Bragg, who hates Donald Trump, but it's all Manhattan's fault. Now dare they? We'll get him on. What? They don't actually have the evidence. The prosecution tried, they don't have it, and so they dropped it. But guys, what do y'all think?
Thanks for watching. Our audience has helped build TYT into the media giant it is today. Together, we can accomplish anything. Support our work and join us at tyt.com/team.
We're going to get to much worse from Columbia in terms of the new program in a second, but on this one, so have you heard of the protester that ran over other protesters with their car? I mean, there was real violence right outside of Columbia. Oh, right, it was a pro-Israel protester that ran over a little old lady. And so, did you hear anything about that? Were there congressional hearings about it? Is there giant new propaganda things that Columbia students have to go through to tell them how evil pro-Israel radicals are, et cetera, or about Islamophobia or any? No, nothing. But we're told that the peace protesters were the violent ones. Oh, while you're not looking, we're going to drop all the charges because we were lying all along. There was no violence at all from the peace side. Same thing at UCLA. Peace protesters were peaceful. And a lot of them, by the way, in both places were Jewish. But we all heard, oh, no, it's not about Israel. It's that they're evil anti-Semites who are foaming at the mouth and all violent, etc. So who did the violence at UCLA? Pro-Israel radicals. Okay, and that night they beat up the peace protesters for 2-3 hours straight. No one was arrested that night. Many weeks later, only one person was arrested, even though you see all their faces, we know all their names. And the cops refused to arrest most of them. But the other side got arrested. The ones who got beat up at UCLA got arrested, and then have to figure out, can they graduate, or are these universities just going to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from them and not give them a diploma after they spent all that money at Columbia and UCLA because they dared to criticize Israel, which is apparently the biggest sin in America. Keep it real, guys. If you think this is really, oh my God, we're really concerned about bigotry. Are you? Because I don't see you doing anything about bigotry against Muslims. We get death threats daily, 200 times a day. Are you doing anything about that? Where's the congressional hearings? Elise Stefanik, where the hell are you, right? No, you could hate Muslims all day, all night. You could, and it isn't about Jews, Muslims, Christians. It's just one country that cannot be criticized in this country. It's Israel. And by the way, you can say anything you want about America. That's totally fine. You just can't criticize a different country. Or as I said, much worse in a second. But Jackson, thoughts on this?
Well, the most ironic thing to me about how much of a cardinal sin it is to criticize Israel in this country at all is how unbalanced it is with the current conflict going on. Like, it's so obvious who has the guns, who has the influence, who has the big weapons on their side. Israel has the United States and a bunch of other countries on their side that continuously supply them with tax dollars to give them programs that we want, that we lack, that we should have. But I mean, how much of a grumpy old creep do you have to be to want to see these kids punished and disciplined for having courage to stand up and demonstrate their First Amendment rights, to speak up about an issue that's so clearly not fair? And Netanyahu, I mean, the other day he came out. How entitled is he to come out and pretend like, oh, we just stopped giving him weapons? And again, it's not just the weapons we've given him recently, but everything that America gives him through, again, American working tax dollars. So it's just, no one's buying it. And that's one of the biggest reasons why Joe Biden is in the situation that he's in, because we live in a time where you can't just tell people what it is. We live in a digital age, and Gen Z and millennials and pretty much everybody can see what's happening with their own eyes. But it's just really pitiful to see adults, just trying to discourage a bunch of kids from standing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad these charges were dropped, but there is worse, because the rest of Colombia will be punished for the actions of these brave, peaceful protesters that night. So as we all know, the protests against the ongoing assault on Gaza that have swept campuses have really brought up discussions of anti-Semitism, founded, unfounded, alleged, imagined, a good faith, bad faith, but they're there. And specifically in Colombia, one thing that happened in the fallout of the demonstrations and the encampment there was the creation of an anti-Semitism task force. And that's a task force we're gonna talk about because it seems now they have plans for Columbia students to take an anti-Semitism orientation, a required orientation, much like any freshman orientation, but this time about anti-Semitism. And we are not learning this from the task force itself. We're actually learning this from Haaretz that did a report and an interview with 3 of the members on that task force. So numerous participants in the task force, including its 3 co-chairs, Columbia faculty members, many of whom are outspoken Israel supporters, and more on that in a second, openly discussed the not yet published report with the newspaper before any such information was shared with the university's community or even their colleagues. So what's the training gonna entail? So now that we know, they spilled the beans, what's gonna be in it? The training and orientation are designed to provide everyone beginning their time at the university with initial knowledge of what's acceptable and unacceptable in our community, similar to programs on sexual harassment and other issues. We aim for consistency, a consistent set of rules that are consistently enforced, ensuring everyone feels they're being treated fairly within the system. That sounds good. Are they going to be consistent? And also, what do they mean by anti-Semitism? And this, I think, is the biggest question and has been the question circling criticisms of Israel that have come up in the last 9 months since the assault on Gaza. So the task force was slow to define anti-Semitism, but now they confirmed to Haaretz that their definition of anti-Semitism will likely include chants calling for the annihilation of the Jewish state as being offensive to many Jews on campus. Chants criticizing the Israeli government will not be considered anti-Semitism in any way.
Is that right? Well, let's find out.
Well, okay. So who determines what means annihilation and what doesn't mean annihilation? It seems like this is just up for interpretation. And it seems like there's this very slippery slope, and actually Jewish students on Columbia campus are naming that slippery slope into just conflating Israel with all Jews and criticizing Israel with with anti-Semitism. So there's an op-ed for the Columbia Spectator that 4 Jewish grad students wrote. They said, ever since the task force was announced, we feared that it would equate Zionism and Jewishness. All 3 co-chairs of the task force, Esther Fuchs, Nicholas Lehman, and David Scheiser, are members of the Academic Engagement Network, a Zionist advocacy organization, and 3 of them penned a statement supporting Columbia's ties to Israel. Oh, interesting. So the task force set up on anti-Semitism is actually a pro-Israel task force. And I went to the website and we can read a little bit of what AEN or the Academic Engagement Network's goals are. They say their mission is to mobilize networks of university faculty and administrators to counter anti-Semitism, oppose denigration of Jewish and Zionist identities, those are very as if they were one, and promote academic freedom and advance education about Israel. In other words, let me shorthand this for you. It's propaganda. And we know that Zionist propaganda often targets academics, professors who speak out about Palestine, and now students. Now 3 of them are part of this task force. Ergo, everyone's going to have to undergo an orientation that conflates or draws such a fine line that it has a chilling effect if anyone would ever dare speak out for the Palestinian people. But Cenk, to continue your thoughts about, does this apply equally to all students, to everybody?
Yeah, so as The Intercept explained, they are now calling anti-Zionism anti-Semitic. But wait, Zionism is a political ideology, and it was to set up the state of Israel, and it has upsides and downsides. I don't love using the word Zionism, but banning anyone saying that they're against Zionism, well, that's outrageous. That's a political ideology. So, okay, so let's say that you're a Palestinian and you happen to be in the area that Israel took over, and then your family was driven from your home and you were ethnically cleansed from that area. You're still not allowed to complain about it? No, because if you criticize Israel for doing that and you're against Zionism, that's it, you anti-Semite. You should just let your house be taken and never return to you, and you should be driven from your land and shut up about it. Shut up. You're not allowed to criticize Israel. So it's this nonsense, oh, no, you can criticize Israel. You just can't criticize it in this way, that way, this way, that way. Yeah. Okay, does this apply to any other country, religion, etc.? Are they doing, was there anti-Semitic comments at Columbia? Yes. Are there anti-Semitic comments at every college in every place? Yes. Are there also anti-black comments, anti-white comments, anti-Asian comments, anti-Muslim comments, anti-Christian comments? Of course. Of all those comments, which one is the most prevalent on college campuses or anywhere else? It's not close. By a landslide, anti-Muslim comments. Is there a giant committee filled with nothing but Muslim nation supporting people who are going to do propaganda? Now, every student coming into Columbia must say that they will never criticize a Muslim nation that is racist and bigoted. If you say something against the beloved Muslim state of Saudi Arabia, you'll be kicked out of Columbia. Well, of course not, that's insane, right? Doing it about Israel, I know, I don't want to break your heart, just as insane as doing it about Saudi Arabia. So, and to do it uneven, guys, it's not helping anybody.
No.
And that's part of why Jewish students are complaining. So I'm Turkish from background, right? If they said, oh, okay, Cenk, you went to Columbia, So because you're so special and important and the country you come from is just the greatest country in the whole world, we're gonna pass a law that, or a rule here, that everybody that comes into Colombia has to promise to never criticize Turkey, because we would consider that anti-Turkish. Okay, let's make it more specific. Zionism is about the foundation of Israel, right? So no one is allowed to criticize the foundation of Turkey. Well, a lot of Greeks were killed, Syrians were killed, or certainly Armenians were killed. But no, shush! You're not allowed to talk about the Armenian genocide because that's anti-Turkish and would hurt my feelings.
But you can talk about everything else, Cenk.
You can talk about everything else. Every other nation can be
stuff.
Every other nation can be criticized. Every other nation it's not racist to criticize them. The only nation where if you criticize it, by definition, you're a racist and a bigot, and you'll be driven from the school is Turkey. You know, my reaction would be, no, don't do that. Not only because it's an incredibly dumb idea, but because you'll get everyone to hate us. Because if you say there's only one people that cannot be criticized, everybody's gonna hate them. Don't you know anything about human nature? So that's why I use the analogy of a different country or a different religion, because if you apply it to any other religion or country, it sounds mental.
Yeah.
And people from that place would know that's a bad idea. Don't hurt us like that, because everyone will hate us. But when it comes to Israel, just the pro-Israel side is so blinded. They can't see it. They're like, no, we just tell all the students they're never allowed to criticize Zionism. Zionism is awesome. Say Zionism is awesome. Otherwise, I'm gonna kick you out of Colombia. You look like a lunatic, and you're gonna hurt your own people, let alone everyone else. Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. And as you pointed out, you're just basically isolating Israel to the point where it's just really easy to make assumptions, even if you don't know what Netanyahu's been up to, even if you don't know about the history of settlements. If you know nothing about that, you can just see it plain and clear now. Because at the end of the day, the whole AIPAC corporate money apparatus is losing the messaging war. They're losing the narrative war. And so ultimately next, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna own up to it, or are you just gonna try to sweep things under the rug and be quiet? Most likely the latter, but I don't think that the public is gonna let that go down because of how many innocent people are dying and how we're being exposed to it constantly. So, you know, it is what it is. They made their bed, and now they're losing the PR battle worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, just one comment out of thousands, my guess at Columbia. Look, I can tell you literally thousands of comments against me in a week that are, hey, go Muslim, go die. You're a terrorist scum, you should die. You're Turkish or Muslim or brown or whatever. Get raped, go die, do it. Nobody gives a goddamn about it. Okay, you see it. Anywhere where you see me, you will see dozens of comments like that. Ain't nobody doing congressional hearings because no one in this country cares about Muslims. And so in the case of Colombia, one of the students reports, I told the offices at Columbia, the administration, that one of the Israeli protesters said, go get raped in Gaza. They didn't do anything about it. They don't care. So when you're uneven like that, and you can say anything you want about everybody else, but you're not allowed to say it about these people, you've set those people up for hatred. Don't do it. It's a terrible idea. Terrible. But drunk on power, these alumni, et cetera, that are pushing this, they are not unilateral. They do not control everything. So, but in this case, these particular people have gotten this rule passed, and now the indoctrination begins. And I guarantee you it backfires. It's the worst idea I've ever seen. And right now, as an alumnus of Columbia, I'm absolutely embarrassed. And what am I gonna send my kids to Columbia now? And do they have to listen? And do they have to tell Columbia, oh, of course, sir, yes, Israel is great, sir. I will never criticize Israel or Zionism, sir. Of course, sir. Now, can I be allowed in, sir?
We should have anti-Semitism, we should have anti-hate and bigotry like orientations. But the fact that this was after a massive protest to stop the murder of innocent civilians, everyone knows what this is. It's so bald-faced, it's so clear, and it's so embarrassing embarrassing. And that's why Jews are the ones leading this cause at Columbia to say, no, we do not in our name. This is not the kind of anti-Semitism that we agree, the definition of anti-Semitism that we agree with.
Okay, super last thing. I just want to be clear. You do something that says, hey, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, hatred against Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, etc., is bad. No problem. We're all okay. It's even. We're saying, hey, don't be jerks to one another, right? But this isn't that. This is not just anti-Semitism. Even if it was just anti-Semitism by itself, well, there's nothing wrong with being against anti-Semitism, right? But they say anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. So that's just a backdoor way of saying you're never allowed to criticize Israel. That's a completely different thing. And there's no other nation where they're gonna do indoctrination that says you're not allowed to criticize that nation, their foundation, or anything about them, because that would be ridiculous. It's equally ridiculous when it's about Israel.